Out there. Hey, all you beautiful people. How you doing? Thanks for joining me. I am 3 minutes late, and I don't give a fuck. What are you, my boss? Sorry, I feel like I started a little harsh. Started a little hard on you out of the gate. A lot of big news to talk about. The continued economic meltdown of the American society. So that'll be on the agenda somewhere if I get to it later. And then large anti-war rallies that happened today around the country. It's also we're going to talk a little bit about the war with Iraq. Not sure if you recall that one, but it's the 20th anniversary. So fucking pour a little bit of your beer out on the sidewalk for 1 million Iraqis. Jesus. Meanwhile, the ICC is bringing in war crimes charges against Putin, not against the American war criminals that have perpetrated 6 million deaths is the estimate in our war on terror. I'm going to get into that. A lot more. New episode of the Most Censored News I'm going to show you. So much important stuff. AOC's latest, including holding a military recruitment event. Because, she's left-wing, right? She's progressive. Nothing like a military recruitment event to say, I'm real progressive. I'm a real lefty. But let's start off with, and click subscribe and click thumbs up and click all the things you can click. If there's anything you click that you can click, just click it. Just click it to click it because you're clicking it. Do all that. I want to start off with this. I kind of wasn't going to cover this because it's, I don't want to feel like, I don't know, you're getting clicks off someone getting beat up. But the reason I feel it's needed to cover this is because I haven't seen much about this. And that's kind of what made me think, well, this needs to be covered more. Yanis Varoufakis, who is an awesome fucking rock star of a leftist economist, but also a political figure in Greece. But I think many people know him just kind of as an economist. He is anti-capitalist, and he does great writing and speaking about it. And that's how I knew him initially, not because I'm in Greece and keep up with Greek politicians, but he really is an international rock star on leftist, and he was beat up by hired thugs. I think that's his analysis of who did it. And beat up pretty horribly. This is from Common Dreams, which covered it. But like I said, I have not seen much coverage of it. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. But after brutal assault, Yanis Varoufakis urges progressives to focus on what really matters. And, he does something that is, if you're a wonderful person, you do this, but it's pretty, I don't know that I could pull off doing it, where he has been horribly harmed and maimed, and he just shifts the topic, and he's getting interviewed by people partially because of that. I mean, he's also a Greek politician. And he just shifts the topic away from himself, which is pretty incredible when you've just faced something traumatic like that. He shifts it to 57 people who died in the Greek train accident in Greece that killed 57 people recently. And he says it is due to austerity. It is due to the cutting of their infrastructure that has caused that. So anyway, Yanis Varoufakis is recovering from a brutal assault that left him with a broken nose and cheekbone. Leftist Greek lawmaker Yanis Varoufakis on Tuesday urged progressives not to get distracted from the railway accident that killed 57 people last month or the neoliberal privatize everything doctrine he blames for the disaster. Another reason I love this guy is because he rightly blames neoliberals for being fucking neoliberals. Appearing on a television show, Varoufakis, the parliamentary leader of the left-wing, I don't know if they say MERA 25 party. I don't really keep up with Greece's political parties, and former finance minister told hosts, not going to try and read their Greek names, He needs to thank the public hospital for performing miracles. He said, I will recover, but those 57 from the train accident won't. I'm trying to find the part where he was attacked Friday evening outside a restaurant in the Athens neighborhood of Exarchia. According to Democracy in Europe movement, which Varoufakis co-founded, the leftist lawmaker was at the restaurant with members of the movement from around Europe. A small group of thugs stormed the place, shouting aggressively, falsely accusing him of signing off on Greece's bailouts with the Troika. Varoufakis stood up to talk to them, but they immediately responded with violence, savagely beating him while filming the scene. During his appearance, Varoufakis said that after he left the eatery, one of his assailants was pushing me and hitting me, and I said to him, I'm trying to respect you, to listen to what you want, and you're hitting me. When asked why he did not have the police or a security escort, Varoufakis said police make him feel imprisoned, but that things will probably change now due to my wife's demand. But anyway, I also think this was important to cover because this is what happens in a lot of countries to those who actually are left-wing, not the bullshit, because the Democrats in our country are not fucking left-wing, okay? Don't pretend they're left-wing. Don't call them left-wing. The Democrats in the federal government, and many of them across the country, but in the government, are not left-wing by any means. They are right-wing, and on certain issues, they may be a little bit left of the far right, but on other issues, they're more right than the far right, such as issues of certain wars. The Democrats have fought more for a continued proxy war in Ukraine than many on the right wing in the United States. But anyway, my point was, don't stand up for them and call them or don't call them left wing. They're not fucking left wing. And if you are actually left wing, if you're an actual leftist, you actually fight for the people, as Yanis Varoufakis has. You actually want to stop the ruling class from exploiting the poor and the middle class, and actually want to change things, actually want to decrease inequality. If you are that, then you face all kinds of suppression and attacks and censorship. And sometimes those attacks are even physical, as in this case. He called them hired thugs because, I guess he got the impression these people didn't actually know anything about his politics really, and they were sent to go get him. But whether they were hired or not hired doesn't really matter. The point is, fascism behaves like this. Fascism will do anything to attack those who threaten it. And sometimes, I can't remember who I heard this quote from, but it struck me as kind of true that many people who are slowly joining fascist movements in America and elsewhere, it's because fascism, in a certain sense, if you're of a certain type of person, fascism is fun. If you're in the in-group, right? It's fun to say, ha, 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 those people are losers. Those people don't deserve to exist. If you're gay, if you're a woman, whatever, they're not real people. I'm the real people. And so if you're that sociopathic, meaning you don't have empathy for others, then it's kind of fun. It's fun to be a fascist. And you see it now. You see it now in the United States with anti-trans movements. You see it now with, you could call them anti-woman movements, but women hating of various kinds throughout the nation. You see it now with the hatred of immigrants, hatred of refugees. It's comforting and enjoyable to say, I'm not a loser. It's them who's a loser and who are losers, and they deserve to be beaten and harmed. And anyway, that's a bit of a side point, but the main point here is that, and Varoufakis, as he said, will continue to fight for change, and he's already giving interviews. He's not running scared. And in many countries, people are killed. I in many ways am lucky as the most censored comedian in America. I, with most of my stuff gone or censored, and the videos that you're seeing, like this one, are seen by a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of what my followers used to be. But that is nothing compared to those who are imprisoned, like Julian Assange, those who are murdered, killed around the world, like so many journalists and environmental fighters. And Colombia is one of the worst countries where so many environmental fighters have been killed. But of course, you have environmental fighters being killed in the United States. Just look at Tortuguita down at Cobb City, killed for trying to defend a forest, unarmed and killed while trying to defend a forest. So it happens here too. And, you know, this is just another example of what people face if they are going to stand up publicly against the ruling class fascism. I hope Yanis Varoufakis, obviously, I hope he is able to protect himself and not have this ever happen again. But I also hope he continues fighting, which it clearly seems he will. And again, you know, sorry, I've said it again 13 times, I think. But again, to say again, if I'd like, you know, again, if I could say one thing again, I'm going to say again that again, I think again is something that it should happen again. Again, I think, I mean, the reason I believe this story was something that needed to be covered was not because I just wanted to get clicks over the horrible beating of a leftist. It's because I didn't see it being talked about enough. And I think that for those of us who are leftists and are fighting for a better world in which there is equality, people should know. People should know what we're up against, but it also goes to show that you're having an impact. Like, when you're not having an impact, you aren't suppressed. When you're not having an impact, you aren't you aren't attacked. And so the fact that he's facing this shows that he is having an impact. And many are. And then, of course, I didn't even get into, in terms of leftists, I didn't even get into those, especially in Latin America, but other countries as well, who have been assassinated for being leftists or socialists. There's plenty, you know, Salvador Allende and many others who have been couped and assassinated. Sometimes it's a lawfare coup, like Lula, put into prison. But yeah, and then there's Julian Assange, who I don't even think would ever call himself a leftist, but is simply a pure seeker of truth and wanted to reveal the reality to everyone. And for that, he has been tortured for 10 years. This is what we face. Meanwhile, if you're just kind of a belligerent right-wing neo-fascist kind of figure like Trump, you can be president. You can be a fascist president in the United States. You can be a lot of things if you're just a fucking horrific right-winger. Okay, but I want to move on to something great that happened today. This is the anti-war rally put together. I think this is a good date to do it on because it's essentially the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, the invasion and destruction of Iraq. And I wanted to show this thread. One of the main organizations putting together this anti-war rally, it was in DC, but it was in other cities as well, but mainly DC. One of the main organizations was Answer Coalition, and they have a great thread here on what it was like, what went down. I want to show you some of it. This starts off with Eugene Puryear speaking at to the camera, and he, of course, has done amazing things, but he also is the host of Breakthrough News. You might know them. Anyway, here's Eugene.
This march is happening today on March 18th, 20th anniversary of the Iraq War, to say fund people's needs, not the war machine. Whether we're talking about the NATO proxy war in Ukraine, whether we're talking about the sanctions suffocating places all around the world, whether we're talking about the drone wars being waged on Africa, the nuclear chicken being played in China, this military-industrial complex is out of control, and all it is about is a handful of ruling elites in the United States who want to make the rules and force everyone else in the world to follow them, regardless of what they want. of this war machine, and to say that whether we're talking about the water in Jackson, Mississippi, the water in Flint, Michigan, the need for more, for bridges, for schools, for hospitals, for healthcare and education, all of that is being totally lost with this war machine sucking down every little bit of resources.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
The only thing I'd like to add is I hope people will go to answercoalition.org and join this movement, because we need everyone who's standing up against every form of injustice out there to be with us against this war machine.
There you go. There's Eugene speaking at the rally. You can see behind him Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. But let's see what else they had to say here. This military industrial complex is out of control. This is a quote from Eugene that you just saw. We're here to talk about the water in Jackson, Missouri, and Flint, Michigan, the need for healthcare, education. All of that is being lost with this war machine sucking every bit of resources. And in fact, there's elevated lead beyond what is considered safe in roughly 2,000 cities around the United States. And his point is we ignore all of that so that we can have a proxy war in Ukraine. Here's another Answer Coalition tweet. Remember Iraq, no more wars based on lies. On the 20th anniversary of the criminal U.S. invasion of Iraq, we marched in D.C. to demand peace in Ukraine and say no to the U.S. war drive, no to endless war, and no to austerity. The corporate media has decided, this is a quote from Brian Becker, so actually I'll just play it rather than quote it here.
ABC, corporate media has decided to boycott the American people when they speak up against the war machine. CNN, NBC, ABC, all the corporate networks are just echo chambers for the Pentagon, nothing else. Don't think of them as the real media or real journalism. Alternative media is the media.
Thank you so much.
Corporate media has decided.
So there's Brian Becker, the co-founder of Answer Coalition, speaking at the protest. And let me ask you guys, how much did you see about this on mainstream media, right? How much was MSNBC or CNN covering this? You think it was a lot? I don't think so. Let's see. Here's Claudia De La Cruz of the People's Forum speaking.
Machine down. The planet and humanity. Hello, everyone. We are here to say no to the war machine. We're here to let the world know that we are committed as a people to shut the war machine down. The planet and humanity depend on us. We got to fight. We got to continue to demand an end to NATO, an end to Africa, an end to the Southern Command, and the levels of sanctions that the U.S. has all across the globe. We need to continue to make the connections of working class people in the United States to working class people all around the world. So we're here making those demands. We're also recommitting ourselves to lift up the anti-war movement once again. Hello, everyone. We are here to say.
So there you go. Another great speaker at this rally. $886 billion for the military, 800 plus bases around the globe, military bases around the globe. The U.S. government is the largest purveyor of violence abroad and at home. We are marching for dignified jobs, safe housing, and healthcare for all. Fund the people, not the war. So all important stuff. And here's Code Pink as well. China is not our enemy from Jody Evans. So much important stuff going on at this rally today, and yet you will hear none of it on mainstream media, even if they did a little segment on it, which I'm sure they didn't. But if they did, it would probably be like, some of them claim to be genuine anti-war critics, but many of them just love, are anti-Semites, and they're Chinese agents. Who knows what the fuck they'd say, but that's what you get from your mainstream media, garbage propaganda. Here is the real live Americans standing up against war, saying we're done with a proxy war in Ukraine that needs to end immediately. We need to have I mean, not we, but Ukraine and Russia need to have the fucking peace talks that were almost signed in April of last year, but were stopped by the United States and the UK. That needs to happen immediately. And ultimately, it will happen. So it's basically just how much of Ukraine and how many Ukrainians do you want to kill and destroy before Ukraine and Russia actually sit down and end this thing. But Ukraine won't allow it because Zelensky is a puppet of the United States doing the proxy war bidding. And, that's the people that marched and spoke today are against all of that, are actually against war in a different way than your mainstream media pretends to be. Oh, yeah, and I love this, all the amazing music you'll hear at these protests as well. So I might as well play this as well. Just 10 seconds. And no to, one of the signs said no to NATO, yes to peace, which is another important aspect of this. NATO is not a peace organization. They are a military and war organization. They create war. They create death. They create destruction. That is what they are. And the liberals across America believe that, I guess that right-wingers across America believe that that NATO is they're fine with it being a pro-war organization because they're like, so what, man? We got to beat other countries because they can suck it or whatever they say. I don't know. I think that was a pretty good impersonation. But liberals across America, I think, are told and believe because they never question anything that NATO is a organization for peace, an effort for peace. No, NATO has created many wars and will continue to create wars, such as it's creating the proxy war, helping create the proxy war in Ukraine, and of course, utterly destroying Libya, turning it from one of the most advanced societies in Africa to fucking warring, warlords, battling warlords with open air slave markets. And that's what NATO does. And people need to understand that. NATO endorses all of the U.S. Belligerents. And of course, really, either caves to, if you want to be positive, then cave to all of the U.S. belligerents. And if you want to be negative, they're just part of all of the U.S. belligerents. But anyway, I hope you have shared some of what went on in D.C. today because it is incredibly important. All right, moving on to a very related topic is this is the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, and Stefan Simonowitz, if I pronounced that correctly, did a great, one might say epic thread on everything that has been proven about the invasion of Iraq since we were told all those lies 20 years ago. And I want to show some of this. I don't think I have time to go through all of it, but I think a lot of people don't realize just how much has been revealed about the invasion of Iraq. We all know WMD weren't found, but it's far larger than just that. He says, on March 19th, it'll be 20 years since the start of the Iraq War. 50 days before the war, OTD in 2003, Bush said the 16 words. The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa. It was a lie based on a forgery.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa. Our intelligence sources tell us that he has attempted to purchase high-strength aluminum tubes suitable for nuclear weapons production. Saddam Hussein has not credibly explained these activities. He clearly has much to hide. The dictator of Iraq is not disarming. To the contrary, he is deceiving.
And of course, this is the thing where the United States accuses others of doing what they're doing. I mean, Bush is blatantly lying. All of them are blatantly lying, and they accuse others of lying. So, to cover their own tracks, but also in this case to justify an invasion. And we also know from General Wesley Clark revealing, even though he is a standard Democrat, and he actually was the supreme NATO allied commander at one point. So this is no leftist. This is no commie pinko. He has revealed that when the day after 9/11, he went into the Pentagon and certain people told him that they were going to invade 7 countries in 5 years. One of them, or the first one, would be Iraq. And this is the day after 9/11. So they literally had no idea who had done it. And they had, they had no idea who had done it, except they had months earlier had documents that said bin Laden determined to attack within the U.S. And they were saying, okay, now that that's happened, we're immediately invading Iraq. And Wesley Clark, despite being a general, despite being a military guy, and despite being all for America, he said, wait a second, what's Iraq got to do with this? Well, nothing, but they wanted to invade Iraq. Simonowitz continues, the documents claiming Iraq was attempting to procure uranium from Niger, date from 2001, and were obvious forgeries. They'd already been investigated and debunked. The CIA and State Department had raised doubts about their legitimacy at least 14 times. The International Atomic Energy Agency judged them to be forged. On this date in 2003, a day after his State of the Union speech, Bush met Blair and told him he intended to invade Iraq, even if UN inspectors found no evidence of WMD and it considered flying U-2 reconnaissance planes over Iraq painted in UN colors to tempt Iraqi forces to fire on them. So this is a Blair-Bush deal before the Iraq War, basically to invade Iraq, whether anything was found or not. The Bush-Blair memo is a secret memo in their 2-hour meeting in Washington exactly 20 years ago. It shows that Bush and Blair made a secret deal to invade Iraq, regardless of whether WMD were discovered. But Bush and Blair had been plotting the invasion of Iraq for at least a year before the Iraq War. In the 3/28/02, this guy's British, and for some odd reason, he puts the days first on the date. I don't know what you're doing. The 3/28 memo from Colin Powell to Bush, he writes that Blair will be with us should military operations be necessary. The UK will follow our lead, which, by the way, the UK has always bent over in every which way for the United States. So that's no big surprise. A memo from Blair to Bush on October 11, 2001 reveals they were openly discussing toppling Saddam Hussein just a month after 9/11. We need to deal with Saddam, Blair writes. I am sure we can devise a strategy for Saddam deliverable at a later date. This is long before they had any connection to Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and they're going to get us. And this was before they'd even done all that propaganda shit. And still the UK and US are saying this. And, I've discussed this before. I think the other hidden side of this that people don't seem to realize is why did Iraq have to be destroyed and turned into a failed state? Well, the real reason was not the oil because, the U.S. has a lot of oil and there's ways for the U.S. to steal oil without destroying an entire country. And at the end of the day, the U.S. didn't even steal that much oil from Iraq. Very little, actually. So what's the real reason? Well, the real reason is that Iraq dropped the petrodollar and Iraq was going outside of the U.S. central banking system and was threatening the OPEC system or threatening the petrodollar OPEC system that said that all oil is, sold and bought in dollars. And therefore, the US dollar is the global reserve currency, which also gives it power. So if you start chipping away at that, if countries start going outside of the petrodollar for oil, then all of a sudden it starts to break down, right? Other countries may say, yeah, this is a good idea. We don't like the United States either. We're going to sell and buy oil and other things. And of course, that's what's happening right now. It took years and years to happen. But now Russia, after having the sanctions, which the U.S. put on them, is now saying, we're going to sell sell our oil in rubles. So you've got to give us rubles, which has given a lot of strength to the ruble. The U.S. sanctions have kind of backfired in that way. And that's the real reason that Iraq had to be turned into a failed state. Same with Libya. Gaddafi was going outside of the central banking system. He was discussing switching to a gold dinar as the currency for all of Africa. And we see what happened to Gaddafi in Libya. So you see this again and again, that's the real reason. The U.S. has a lot of reasons to hate countries. I mean, we don't hate Cuba. Our ongoing economic war against Cuba isn't about the petrodollar. It's about other things. But the countries that we really fuck up, that we fucking rain bombs down on, it's usually connected to central banking and petrodollar. Those are the ones we really fuck the fuck up. Whereas the other ones, it's like Cuba, we're content with just kind of fucking making their lives miserable and having economic war against them. Because what we really hate about Cuba is just the threat of the good example. They give everybody health care. They give everybody employment. They give everybody free education and free housing. And, they have a socialist country. That doesn't mean all of it's perfect. I think that's a straw man that people use. They'll find something bad about Cuba and go, well, what about this? And it's like saying that all these things are positive in Cuba does not mean that everything is perfect in Cuba. Anyway, here is a continued quote from Blair to Bush. God, this sounds like some fucking. It sounds like some Hugh Grant rom-com line, like where they're like at the end, "You had me at hello" or whatever. I realize that one's not Hugh Grant, but literally, Blair said to Bush, "quote, I will be with you, whatever." Like whatever may come. Does that not sound like a bad romantic song? I'll be with you, whatever may come. I'm with you, good sir. The quote then continues, getting rid of Saddam is the right thing to do. In removing him, do you need a coalition? The U.S. could do it alone with UK support. So here's a quote from Rumsfeld. Iraq poses a serious and mounting threat to our country. Yeah, right. In 2002, he said, we know they have WMDs. Well, they used to have WMDs because we sold them to them. We gave them WMDs, but they no longer, in 2002, they no longer had WMDs. And he said, quote, we know they have WMDs. We know they have active programs. There isn't any debate about it. Yeah, there's plenty of debate about it because you're fucking lying. The U.S. and British were lying us into war. And so here's the famous Colin Powell speech. Actually, I'll go ahead and play part of it out loud.
The gravity of this moment is matched by the gravity of the threat that Iraq's weapons of mass destruction pose to the world. Let me now turn to those deadly weapons programs and describe why they are real and present dangers to the region and to the world. This is evidence, not conjecture. This is true. This is all well documented. Less than a teaspoon of dry anthrax, a little bit about this amount. This is just about the amount of a teaspoon. Less than a teaspoonful of dry anthrax in an envelope shut down the United States Senate in the fall of 2001.
Which had nothing to do with Iraq. We know that now, and they knew it then too. Nothing to do with Iraq.
This forced several hundred people to undergo emergency medical treatment and killed 2 postal workers just from an amount just about this quantity.
By the way, there's a documentary, I can't remember what it's called, on Netflix, which here's the aspect of that thing that he just mentioned that I didn't know until a few months ago. So as you'll recall, white powder was delivered to multiple places. Among them Congress, but it went through the postal system in DC. So they evacuated Congress immediately, right? Got everyone in Congress out, the whole building. The postal area where the letters are, sorted and everything. They went in there and asked certain questions of people, looked for white powder and things like this, but kept it running, kept the postal facility running. And one or two of those postal employees, I believe, died. So this is how the U.S. government works. We know there's a deadly powder that has been sent to lawmakers. We evacuate Congress because they're worth protecting. We don't evacuate the postal facility because they're not worth protecting. And sure enough, multiple people die. And there's never been any accounting for it. There's never been any reasoning behind it. There's barely been any coverage of it. Like I said, I don't know if you knew it. I didn't know it until a few months ago that they had kept that facility open while they had evacuated Congress. But that's fine, right? Because those people don't matter. Postal employees don't matter. Idiot sold off millionaires in Congress, that's who matter. Those are the people that really matter. We got to protect them. Those are important people. Whereas postal employees, who gives a fuck if a couple died? Not a big thing. It's disgusting.
That was inside of an envelope. Iraq declared 8,500 liters of anthrax, but UNSCOM estimates that Saddam Hussein could have produced 25,000 liters if concentrated into this dry.
Do you hear all the equivocation in everything he's saying? Saddam Hussein could have done this, but he didn't. If concentrated, but it wasn't because it didn't exist. Not only that, he's holding up a tube of that's not anthrax, so fake anthrax, like baking powder or something, that is not from Saddam Hussein. He's never, even as he's holding it up, he didn't claim that it was from Iraq because it wasn't, because it's not even real anthrax. On top of that, they showed that fucking mobile lab unit display at this same speech that he gave, which was called the home run speech, right? This was the Colin Powell did it, and now we can invade Iraq. The images they showed of the mobile labs, if you'll recall, you can Google it right now, they're not images, right? They're drawings. They're like a computerized mock-up of a mobile lab. Why is that? Because the mobile labs didn't fucking exist. So the U.S. government and Colin Powell and his stooges had to create cartoons of the mobile labs that don't exist. They might as well have written Acme on the side of it. It's not a fucking real thing. And so he held up, it's like him holding up a crayon drawing and saying, here are the mobile labs that Saddam Hussein has. On top of that, they showed footage at this same speech. They showed footage of a jet spraying some sort of aerosol out of it. And they claimed that the jet was, dropping chemical weapons, but they didn't reveal, which is, investigators have looked into it and it's been proven that they didn't reveal that video was from like the early to mid 90s. It had no connection to reality in the 2000s, but they played the video as if it was currently happening, as if Saddam Hussein was spraying chemical weapons. Anyway, this is the bullshit that they put forward. Many of you knew at least some of that. And by the way, Colin Powell apparently resisted. I don't know whether this is true or whether this is just the myth Colin Powell wanted to put forward afterwards. By the way, Colin Powell was a fucking awful human being and a dick throughout his entire career. Like, in Vietnam, he helped cover up American atrocities. Like, go read about Colin Powell. So it's not like he was some good guy who he put forward the myth. I know he's dead now, but he put forward the myth that he fought against all of this, and maybe he did fight against some of it, I don't know, but that he didn't really want to give that speech, and he said, quote, I'm not reading this is bullshit, and he changed a bunch of lines. But even so, even if that is true, he still did it. He still fucking did it. He committed war crimes and gave a big fucking speech to justify war crimes. After reading the draft of Powell's speech, a senior CIA agent expressed doubts about the validity of the information based on Curveball. Curveball was the code name of an Iraqi defector who had falsely claimed that Iraq had biological weapons. The entire claim that Iraq had biological weapons program was based on a single unreliable source. Curveball was never interviewed by U.S., UK security services. UK and German intelligence expressed doubts about his claims. Oh, there it is. There's the cartoon. They just showed it. The cartoon of the, there it is, of the mobile weapons lab that does not exist. Why is that a drawing? I mean, like a computer mock-up rather than a photo? Because it's not a real thing. His ex-boss had told German intelligence he was lying. 20 years ago, Blair's spin doctor, Alistair Campbell, issued the dodgy dossier on Iraq's WMDs to journalists. Much of the dossier had been plagiarized from unattributed sources. Well, anyway, I could do this all day, so I should probably wrap this up. But in September, Campbell had published another sexed-up dossier claiming Iraq was able to deploy chemical weapons. Boy, utterly false dossiers that have tried to justify wars. Where have I heard that before? Yes, that's right. Was there a dossier connected to the DNC? The dossier in which they claimed that Donald Trump was, what was it? He was compromised by Russian prostitutes that were peeing on him or whatever the fuck. All bullshit. All bullshit. And the America does this again and again and again. And it's amazing that your average American believes any of this shit. I mean, after WMD in Iraq, after this utter horror show, which the number is not repeated enough, so I'm going to keep repeating it till I fucking die. 6 million. I mean, it's going to go higher, obviously, but for now, 6 million people have been killed in the wars on terror, the various wars, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya. 6 million. 6 million. Just keep repeating it to yourself. 6 million people. And it's not talked about enough. It's not covered. And yet people still believe the garbage coming out of our mainstream media. All right. Well, again, like I said, I could go through this for days, but I should move it along. However, in kind of a similar topic, our so-called, many people call them our left-wing politicians, but they are not left-wing. Democrats are not left-wing. Stop calling them that. Our so-called more left Democratic Congress people, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Today, she had she was part of a military recruitment fair, or whatever you call it. Join representatives. Actually, this is in 2 days. So actually, folks, you should go. Honestly, you should go, and you should, make your mind, have the voices in your head heard. All right, get out your thoughts of whether this sounds like a good thing that's going on here. This is at Renaissance High School Auditorium in the Bronx. It's March 20th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Join representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Adriano Espaillat at the Student Services Fair, which sounds okay, but then you go down a little more, and you see they are hosting a Student Services Fair to help students connect with the U.S. Department of Education, our U.S. service academies. And what does that mean? They will be joined by special guests from the U.S. Naval Academy, the U.S. Air Force Academy, the U.S. Military Academy, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, the U.S. Department of Education. You notice why they, in the upper paragraph, the one they're promoting more, why they say U.S. service academies is because they don't want people to put it together that this is a giant military recruitment fair is what this shit show is. And it involves AOC. And of course, this is with students. This is when you get people to do something as dumb as join the U.S. empire's war machine. has to do with that when they're young, they people believe this stuff when they're young, and I don't blame them for being young and uninformed on this. Like when I was 18, I didn't think the military was great, but I didn't have a hugely negative view of it. I was just like, I don't really want to dress up like a lot of other people and fucking be told what to do. That sounds like shit. That was kind of my view. That was my informed view on it. But here is AOC, and I don't want to act like she's the only one. Of course, Republicans do this. Of course, other Democrats do this. But this is supposedly the left wing of the Democratic Party, and all in for tricking young people to join the military and become part of our killing machine around the world. It's just horrific. It's disgusting. I mean, it really is just repulsive on every level. If you want to actually be left or leftist, then you cannot support the U.S. military. You cannot support our killing machine. It's insanity, and it's sociopathic when we've killed 6 million over the past 20 years, and that's just the wars on terror. That's not the economic wars on so many other countries, etc. Okay, I am headed over the rest of this, which, by the way, we're going to get into the debate over the sources of COVID. Let's get into that a little bit. I'm going to do that right now over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. I forgot to mention, because it's been 2 weeks in a row, which is why I forgot to mention it, but I am sorry that Eleanor Goldfield is not here tonight. We are involved in moving and all other things that are happening right now. This is a friend's house I'm at. So, yeah, we will soon. We will get back to both of us on Saturdays. I'm sorry. I know that some of you only show up for Eleanor, and don't tell me who you are because I find it very hurtful. Okay. But yes, here I will give you the link for those of you who are lazy. I'm a big fan of laziness. So I am putting the link in the comment thread there. That's where I am continuing my live stream right now. We'll get into the debate of the sources of COVID. All right. And for everybody else, I hope you will also join up at leecamp.net. My new book, Dangerous Ideas, comes out in should be a month or less. And you will only get it if you are a subscribing member at leecamp.net. For now, that is the only way. It's an ebook, by the way. It's not a physical book for now. And for now, the only way to get it is to be a member at leecamp.net. Although you'll actually be saving money on a book if you just join up for a month or two, because it's only, if you join up at the lowest level, it's just $6 a month. All right. One more second, and we will be good to go.